Before we start today, I do want to apologize. I've been having some problems in that I'm obsessed with making QR codes, and I get that that's not for everyone, but it's just this weird phase I'm in. So, it'll be short, I promise. It's the QR code phase. Yeah, I know. There's groups. There are groups. So, thank you so much for joining us. We're starting a new series today called The Art of Blank, because we have all kinds of arts that we develop in our life, right? All different ways that you or me have learned to navigate, have learned to uniquely approach living. These are arts of living. For me, one art that I know that I have mastered throughout my life is the art of picking my nose discreetly. At least I think I've mastered it. I think there are people in my life that are like, you have not mastered that. You are a novice in that. You have much more learning to do. Some of you have mastered the art of making every yellow light, or convincing yourself that it was a yellow light when it was in fact a red, We also have spiritual arts that we master, right? Like the art of forgiving yourself, or the art of forgiving others. The art of looking at the worst moments in our lives and realizing that some of the best things came from those moments. And so what I want to do for the next couple of weeks is to look at some of these arts. Now, I want to share that these are not arts that I have come close to mastering. I am still learning them, but these are arts that I am really fascinated about and really passionate about, and I want to just share them with you. So I appreciate you coming and checking this out. And we're going to start today with the art of removing your sunglasses. And I know I put that out there this week, and I just put it out there. And everyone was like, what are you talking about? And it's fun to be like, come on Sunday, and you will see. And then, we see who's diehard, When I was growing up, I met one of my best friends to this day. And this is about high school age, and I started going over to his house. And the first time I went to his house for dinner, I was sitting there eating the delicious food that his family had cooked, and I was getting really, really thirsty. And I looked around, and I realized that no one at the table had anything to drink. And so I said, hey, can I have some water? And my friend was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We always forget to do this. See, my family, we don't drink anything during the meal. We always drink after the meal. So, yes, of course you can have some water. My bad. And it's become this running joke for us because he always tries to remember to offer me a drink while we're going to eat. And I always remember, I don't need to offer him anything because he doesn't drink anything during the meal. But it's those things, those family things, those lifelong things, right? Where you realize, I guess that's just us. I guess that's just my family. Not everyone does this. Sometimes this is revealed to us in relationships. For those of us who are partnered or have a spouse, you kind of realize we do things pretty differently. It's not just you. It's not just wait a second, I thought that was a normal thing. And then you help me see, okay, it's just me. This is something that I realized when me and Olivia started living together. I realized, okay, you can't just put everything in the dishwasher. That's not a thing. Okay. Sure, I accept this. There are things that we don't realize about ourselves because we've been steeped in them our whole life. We've been surrounded by them. It's just as intrinsic to who we are as the air we breathe, and we don't see the air we breathe, so we just accept it for what it is. I'll give you this other illustration. There are two fish swimming in the ocean. And then they are passed going the opposite direction. There is an older fish. And that older fish looks at them and says, hey boys, how's the water? And they pass him, perplexed, and they look at one another and they say, what the hell is water? See, for us, we have water that we swim in that we don't even realize that we are swimming in. Because it's just surrounded us our whole life. We don't recognize parts of ourselves, ways we see the world. We see this just in our own growth and our own development. You ever notice how every few years or every few decades you look back at your life and you're thinking, gosh, who was I? What was I thinking? Because in hindsight, you can kind of look back and see, oh, that was a whole other ocean that I was swimming in, and I had no idea at the time. And this is what can be so powerful about things like therapy or spiritual practices like meditation that give us a little bit of space and distance to look at our own lives. Maybe in therapy, it's looking at your childhood, recognizing the water that you were swimming in, things that you took to be normal at the time, and now, later on, revisiting them decades later, you can say, oh, maybe that wasn't exactly normal. Maybe that was just unique to my situation, and I can take some time to reflect on that, to process that, because I hadn't for so long. And see, I believe that spiritual growth so often is the act of bringing awareness to these things. Spiritual growth doesn't need to be about attaining or achieving. It doesn't even need to be about becoming necessarily. It can be about recognizing and being aware of what we already are, who we've been, and just taking some time to peel back those layers. There's an ancient Jewish wisdom text called the Talmud. And I love this old proverb. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. I'm going to say that one more time. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. That the reality that we interact with every day, it's subject to our own projections, to our own filters, to our own lenses. We've all heard the term, oh, they're wearing a pair of rose-colored glasses, right? This idea that someone is seeing the world through an optimistic lens. Or maybe you might think of it as a naive lens, a filter, a tint to their world. You know, they just got fired and they're like, yay, I got some time off. But we also know that rose is not the only type of sunglasses you can wear. It's not the only color, right? We all know people who have the opposite, who have pessimism or cynicism colored glasses. Maybe it's curiosity colored glasses. We know kids have those glasses, right? They're like, what is this? Why? What is that? It's a good way to see the world, though. I love that. How about this? Judgment colored glasses. I know every time I watch reality TV, I put on my judgment glasses. I'm just like, these people, Sometimes society puts us in our fear-colored glasses, right? I know for me, a type of sunglasses that I have worn my whole life is the, I really want them to like me glasses. How do I get them to like me? And yet I believe that no two people are wearing the exact same shade. No two people are looking at the world the exact same way, with the exact same lens or tint. It's interesting because our families often hand us some sunglasses, and so we might share some ways of seeing the world with them, and yet as you grow up, you might not. You might change. You may have found friends that you feel like you have a lot more in common with, or you see the world a lot more similarly with now. And like the water that we swim in, our sunglasses, they go way back. And they can be hard to recognize because they're such deep parts of ourselves. Because again, they were often handed to us. Think about those moments when a parent explained the world to you or gave you a picture or a perspective of how to look at the world. And of course, when you're a kid, you don't question it. You don't go, oh, thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. I see that you are looking at the world in a way that your parents probably handed to you, and their parents probably handed to you, and I get it. It's not the world. It's just your perspective of the world. It's one of a billion ways of looking at reality. Thank you. No, you don't do that. You just go, we like the Red Sox in this family. I get it, And how often is religion the subject of this? See, when we're young, and for those of us who grew up from a young age with religion, you're not necessarily given the nuance, right? You're not told, okay, religion, it is a set of symbols. It's a set of poetic language. It's a set of stories and culture that can give you a lens through which to look at reality. No, it's not usually explained to us in that way, right? Usually it's like, there was a guy, and he was in a whale, and it probably looked like that. And then you're like, how did he get out? And you're like, no, I did that, you know? It's that's what it was. We weren't there, but that's the closest accurate description that we have, you know? And so what happens? What do we do? Often, we reject because that doesn't work, right? And yet, I don't have a problem with the rejection phase, because often the rejection leads us to something beautiful. But I do believe, or I have found for myself, that it can be healing and helpful not to stay in rejection, but to move from rejection to recognition. The recognition that these parts of our lives, these important things that we were handed, they are lenses. They are, wait for it, they are sunglasses through which we see reality. And to be honest, I have come to a place in my own life where I no longer reject the pair of sunglasses that I was handed. That I can look back and I'm grateful. I know for a lot of us we have trauma, we have baggage when it comes to the religious ideas that we were handed, but for me what I've done is I've tried to come back and look at it and see, oh, I've been given a way of looking at the world. Now, I no longer believe that it's the only way, or the best way, or the only possible path towards a healthy spirituality. But I do recognize that through the Christian tradition, through the Jesus path, I have been given one beautiful way of looking at and interacting with reality. And so now I find that my relationship with Jesus, I find it to be, I'm more excited and passionate about Jesus than I ever was, because I realize, wow, what a gift that I was given this lens to see the world. And what a gift that it encouraged me to be interested still in spirituality and in spiritual things. And the truth is this, as a pastor, as someone who has the privilege of getting to begin these conversations, I've recognized that, look, this is the lens that I was raised with, this is the lens that I understand, and the lens that I have the most experience with. I love talking about Buddhism or Taoism or Sufism and all these other amazing traditions. But the reality is that I was not raised in those, so I don't have the experience. And though I love bringing them into these messages, I've recognized, look, it's the most truthful for me to say, this is the lens through which I have experienced reality for the longest. And so it's been healing and helpful not to reject it, but to recognize it for what it is. But we also know religion is far from the only way and the only lens through which we see reality. How about let's see, I've got a whole thing, and I got to get it just right. I practiced, and you would have loved to see. I should have filmed it, because it would have been, the practice was special. But what else do we have that are the lenses, the sunglasses in our life? How about your ethnic, your cultural background? The food, the music, right? The cultural stories that come as a part of your heritage, the place where your ancestors come from on this earth. And see, I think a problem that we often face is that we say, oh, you know what? No. I just want to be colorblind. I just want to see everyone as exactly the same. And I love Michelle Alexander's response to this idea. She says, we should hope not for a colorblind society, but instead for a world in which we can see each other fully, learn from each other, and do what we can to respond to each other with love. That was King's dream, Martin Luther King, a society that is capable of seeing each other as we are with love. That is a goal worth fighting for. Not to get rid of the unique way you see the world, but embrace it, to see it and respect it in one another. How about this? Your experience with finances. Maybe you grew up with money, maybe you grew up without it. Either way, it shaped and does continues to shape. This could either go really well or catastrophe, we'll see. Yeah. At a certain point, I'm not going to be able to see anything, and we'll just have to trust each other. But your view of money, these are important parts of how we navigate reality. How about this? Yeah, we're just getting started. We are just getting started. Your generation, right? I mean, we are of a different generation. And you probably look to me and you're probably asking me, Jake, can you help us understand the generations that come after you? Can you explain Gen Z to us? And honestly, no, I can't. I'm at a loss. I don't understand Gen Z. I need to do some work there. I don't get it. But that just goes to show that generationally, there are totally different ways of seeing the world. You grow up with entirely different circumstances, right? How about this? Politics. Now, as we know, this can be this color. Good color. Not trying to start a debate in here. Or, I don't even know what colors I'm looking at this point. Right? So it's a little bit of both. Or maybe it just depends on, right? Something I like to do, whenever some big news breaks, I like to pull up Fox News and CNN at the exact same time to see how different they are, how differently through a lens with which they look at the same exact thing. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to the aliens landing just so we can see how differently they report on it. Lastly, one more. I'm not going to, yeah. This one can be a big deal. Gender. Whether you are male, female, trans, non-binary, these are massively important and crucial and deep personal ways through which we interact with the world. And my perspective, I have to understand that my perspective as a man, as a white man, is limited. Look how limited my vision is right now, right? And the point that I want to make today, this reality, look, this image, I've had this in my head for a long time, and I genuinely believe that this is how we navigate life. And one thing I want to tell you is that this is not inherently good or bad. This is the reality. This is just what it is. And to make it good, to make it bad, something that we can do, something that we can practically do to make the best of this situation is to bring awareness to it, to recognize it. I believe that this is what meditation is. See, in meditation, we sit and we observe. And you observe your thoughts coming and going. And in that process, you start to recognize, I am not these thoughts. These thoughts are something else. They're arising within my field of vision, but they are not me. And I think the same is true of these perspectives, of these sunglasses. They're not you. They're certainly a part of you, and they're certainly a part of your upbringing. But you are the thing sitting behind it all. And so the more that we can recognize these lenses, I think the more that we are capable of navigating through the world compassionately and with love. Yet we all know people who are oblivious of this reality, right? People who we might say, oh, they seem really stuck in their ways, really closed off, really unable to look at things a different way. Maybe that's your experience with people in your family, and it's why you experience such a disconnect with them. It's like, I cannot see what you see, and it's really hard to get you to see what I see. But I believe, family, that our job is not to fix other people or to change other people. I don't think we can do it, and I think it's a futile effort. But your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to recognize your own lenses. I think Jesus pointed this to us rather beautifully in Matthew chapter 7, verse 3. He said this, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Now, I love this story because as a kid, I just imagine like someone with a 2x4 coming out of their eye. Like, that looks really painful. But I love it. He says, then you will see clearly. He's pointing us to clarity of vision and the suspending of judgment. What would that look like if we could approach things this way? Well, let's start at the end and work our way back to the beginning in the art of removing your sunglasses. For those of you who are partnered, maybe those of you who look at whether you're partnered in the same sex or opposite sex, maybe you experience these feelings of, gosh, we're so different. I just can't get you to see the world the way I do. And we just give up there. What if we could move from focusing on our differences to getting curious? How about politics? You can have your convictions and still have a conversation. I'm not exactly going in the right order at this time, but my eyes are fuzzy and I'm starting to see dots. No, I'm just kidding. Generations, finances, culture, religion. What if instead of focusing on, oh, I just can't see what you see, instead we get curious. Show me. How can I humble myself? How can I recognize my own lenses and I can see yours and have compassion? And here's what I've learned when it comes to my own experience with religion. Sometimes you need to take the glasses off in order to give them a good clean. And maybe you do put them back on. But it's nice to take them off and look at them and see them for what they are. When I was a kid, I wore glasses, not sunglasses, just regular glasses. And I was, 8, so naturally they got extremely dirty all the time, and I never cleaned them, because that's what 8-year-old boys do. Give me a break. And so even though it wasn't a pair of sunglasses, I was seeing through a filter of grime and cloudiness, and I needed to remember to take them off every once in a while and clean them. And how often do we need to remove a pair of glasses to see some of the smudging that it's accrued over time? This is why I so value this period of my life I call the deconstruction phase, where I looked at the religion that I was handed, and I needed to, and you probably need to do this too, to step back from it for a second, to take them off, to recognize them for what they were. But it's deconstruction, it's not destruction. You want to take your car to the mechanic because something's wrong. You don't just get rid of the car, but you probably need to take it apart to see what the problem is. And we're talking about religion. We're talking about thousands and thousands of years of baggage. So we need to take them off. Doesn't mean we never put them back on again. See, I believe this. You and I also are never truly without any kind of perspective. Because it's your perspective that makes you you. And we were meant to be unique. You were meant to be you. And the unique way that you see the world is special. And it's what makes you you. And I believe that we are here to be human, which includes this reality. But it also means that we want to strike a balance. A balance between realizing, yes, my vision of reality is just that. It's my vision of reality. But it's also a gift. It's also a beautiful thing. I think this is why we love art and music and movies and books, because it's a beautiful way of sharing perspective. You get to dive into someone else's perspective, someone else's sunglasses, someone else's way of seeing the world. I think this is what happens when we fall in love. We not only fall in love with a person, but we fall in love with their vision of the world. We see the world through their eyes. And so the recognition of this balance, of recognizing our limited perspective and the beauty of our perspective leads us to three things, okay? It leads us to humility, because we recognize I can only see what I can see, and it's not the whole picture. 2, it leads us to curiosity. Now that we know this, would you show me what you see? Would you give me some grace in my limited vision, and would you show me what you see? And 3, it leads us to non-judgment. That when we see someone that we disagree with, that we would say, okay, they're operating with their own pair of sunglasses, or there are plenty of pairs of sunglasses, and I know that they probably didn't choose all of them. And they may not even realize that they're there. If we want to connect with one another, then we need to be willing to look through other people's glasses. You don't have to agree fully with someone to be interested in how they see the world. And I wonder if what this would look like if we could move from that feeling like a chore to a privilege. That so often we go, oh gosh, I have to explain my worldview. I have to try to get them to my side. I have to try to see what they see, and it's just so exhausting. But I wonder if we could see it as a privilege. That if you have this gift of recognizing what's actually happening, that you can share it with others, that you can, in love, in humility, in non-judgment, think what a gift it is that I can find commonality, that I can have some humility in this conversation, that I can let go a little bit of the tightness with which I hold on to things. There's someone from this community who is traveling right now, and they are visiting some family, and they shared with me that, there's a little trepidation because they knew that some of the family members that they were going to be seeing saw the world very differently than them. And they felt like, I don't know, what's that going to feel like? And I had this image come to my mind as we were talking, and it was that of a Venn diagram. And this sense that on one side, here's us, here's the way that we see reality. And on the other side, here's a completely different person and the way they see reality. But always, always, there will be overlap. Maybe that place of overlap is razor thin, and it takes a lot of looking. It takes a microscope to see it. But I believe that big or small, that place of overlap is a fertile place. And it's a place of humility. What if we could look at others who see the world differently than us and yet find those commonalities? Usually things like love, even if you disagree with someone politically, or you disagree with someone about all kinds of things, usually there is a love there, a love of family, a care, the things that make us human. We can find them, and we can focus on that fertile ground in the middle. See, I believe love, it's not just a thing, it's not just a verb, but I believe that it also can be the most pure lens through which everything else is seen. Or maybe you might think of love as what we see when we truly have no lenses at all. But either way, I just want to close with this. I want to share a little bit of a perspective on love that has been really helpful to me. This is from Peter Rollins' book, Insurrection. He says this: "Love does not make itself visible, but like light, it makes others visible to us. In a very precise sense, then, love's presence cannot be described as existing, but rather is that which calls others into existence. For to exist literally means to stand forth from the background, to be brought forth. As we have mentioned, love does not stand forth and vie for our attention, but rather brings others forth. In this way, love is not proud and arrogant. It does not say, I'm sublime, I'm beautiful, I'm glorious. No, love humbly points to others and whispers, they are sublime, they are beautiful, they are glorious. Love does not seek out our hymns of praise and prayers of adoration. Love does not want our sacrifices or seek our time, for love always points toward another. To honor love is to be in love, to swim in the world illuminated by love. Is this not the proper theological understanding of God? Not a being we directly love, but rather the depth present in the very act of love itself. not as one who seeks to be glorified, but as the cause of glorification itself. Whether or not the world has some ultimate meaning, love births meaning, brings meaning into the world, and renders the world meaningful, even amidst the feeling that everything is fleeting. In love, the world is transfigured and rendered wonderful. When I think about our motto as a community, love period, I think about this idea that we might choose in every situation that we can to put on love-colored glasses, that love would be the lens that we lean on. And often in our culture, we try to define love through other lenses. We try to look through other lenses as a way of defining love. But what if we looked through the lens of love as a way of defining everything else?